Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another interview covering VCT Americas Stage 2 playoffs. For this occasion, I have here with me Wyatt. For some of you, you would know him as an old guest of mine back during the old days of when I didn't do as much VALORANT interviews. But still, I have him here with me just to talk about his experience and then everything else surrounding that. Wyatt, pleasure to talk to you once again. This time in person. I know it's been a massive change compared to back then when I was trapped in that little box in that Discord call. But first and foremost, I got to give you the obvious initial question. How are you feeling? How are you taking in this entire situation with playoffs wrapping up for VCT Americas this year?
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, very happy to join you. It was a pleasure doing the interview with you last time. I've given you a lot of props. I don't know how much publicly, but definitely just in passing, mentioning to people how well you did prepping for that interview you did with me, how much thought and care you put into the questions you asked, the research, all of that. And so happy to do this with you again, and also definitely great to see how much success you found doing this. It's definitely well deserved. As far as the VCT and the playoffs and everything overall, it's been good. This is actually this is Friday right now, which is the decider game, which is Crew 100 Thieves. It's about to happen for the last champion spot in the top three. And that's going to be my last game that I'm working, doing the desk for that with GB and Mimi, and then I'm going to be done. And it's been a really good time. I've had a fantastic time doing commentary this year, specifically. I like all the people that I get to work with on the desk, but doing the commentary is particularly rewarding in comparison to it. And so that has been kind of the main focus for me, certainly this year. And have been proud of my work there for sure. The progress that I made individually, that Mitch and I made together, and so with this being the last day for me of playoffs in this year, I feel pretty content with the work that I was able to do this year, and the efforts that I put forward with Mitch as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting looking at just yourself, having to be present through the entirety of VCT Americas, from kickoff until now. A vast contrast to past years in which I mentioned you in that first interview about, you kind of talking about how it was a little frustrating to just not be within the main desk or be in the main broadcast for VCT Americas and even before franchising. Now you're much more present. Now it feels like you're a regular member of the broadcast silent. How do you kind of compare yourself from last year and this year with that in mind?
Definitely. I remember when we had spoke last was talking about in specific with that. Definitely the frustration that I was feeling of getting into this position pretty late in the game for me in VALORANT, and having some feelings of exclusion as well with everyone that I was working with, being a part of all this and doing all this, and I was kind of just cast off to the side. And then last year doing VCT as well, I just lost so much time of the actual year working from when Bren and I had been in the car accident in an Uber. And so I was just taking a long time to recover, and so I didn't really get to progress very much last year as far as my on-camera abilities. I didn't get to learn very much or put forth much of my own creation in that way. Whereas this year it felt significantly more fulfilling in regard to how much of my work I could put out, and specifically with doing the commentary with Mitch this year, which was an opportunity that just manifested out of thin air and has certainly been the most rewarding thing that I've done with the VCT broadcast. And so, yeah, with that, I'm definitely leaving this season feeling a lot more content overall than versus the frustrations that I was feeling previously, and at times my inability to even do anything because of some of the outside circumstances as well.
Got to ask you about the fact that for this year saw you partner up with Uber. I mean, how many people will say like, oh, they get to partner with Uber, a very well regarded, well seen caster in him. I mean, how did that even come together in the first place? When did that kind of process start for you from your point of view, and how has the experience been just having to learn under him and having to just bounce off of him, understanding how he casts in games during VCT?
So personally, I've done very little commentary here and there. I did some events many years ago. I'm thinking 2016, 2017 for Team Fortress 2, which is what I used to compete in at the Rewind Lands, I believe were their name. So commentary is not something that I've done a ton of. And Mitch was moving over to VALORANT. He had kind of dipped his toes in previous events early on in the game's life cycle, and then was joining up for the Americas team this year. And there was just there's kind of a lack of, just in general, I think, color casters right now in VALORANT. So it's, I guess, kind of, I think just right place, right time for me, honestly, to have me slot in with him. I had, during negotiations for being a part of the broadcast this year, it was not something that was on the table. It only came to fruition, I want to say, after kickoff. I had gotten messaged if I would be interested in being a commentary duo with him. That was a no-brainer, yes. I wanted to do commentary. I had done it a little bit with Mimi for Game Changers last year, and it was always the most fun to work those days. So, no-brainer to say yes, to do that with Mitch. Also, obviously, he's mega talented, renowned for his talents in the space, and so felt incredibly fortunate that I kind of just got gifted that opportunity. Like I said, sort of just manifested out of thin air, just appeared in front of me, because that was not on the table heading into this year at all. And so I just tried my best to capitalize off of that fortunate right place, right time situation.
What do you think has been the biggest adjustment you had to make in that new role in casting? Because as you said, not did as much. Saber for a few occasions, as you said, back in a few lands in the past. Biggest adjustments, biggest issues also for you within that role, and what are they?
I think probably my biggest issue that I had for a while was that I think often when I speak, especially doing so much podcasting, I often will default back to a very conversational tone, and that is not, at times it will be fine during a cast, but for most of the time that's not the tone that you want to have. So learning to adjust my tone, when to become more excited, reach a peak, and then bring it back down at the appropriate times, bring things up at the appropriate times to then let Mitch take over, finding when we can have that back and forth, keep the energy high when necessary. I think that was one of the things that I ended up working on the most. Also, really trying my best, and I still do, and I still dislike when I do it, is to keep analysis and points about the game very succinct. I think it's really easy to get very in the weeds with speaking about some of the more intricate details of what's happening in the game. And I think that it makes for very jumbled audio, which I really dislike. I much prefer my analytical points and when I'm listening for them to be very sort of as brief as they can be while illustrating what they need to illustrate, which I really admire in the case of Sideshow. I think he's the best at doing that. And so that's something that I definitely try to focus on whenever I'm doing commentary with Mitch as well. And also because I just like to listen to him. I want to let him go off because I know that at any point I can just shut up, pass to him, and he's going to go crazy and, you know, drop some riddles and shit. Like he always will have some crazy bar that he will bring out. And I'm down to just let him go off when necessary too. So those are really the two main things that I've focused on this year and continue to focus on as well.
Interesting you brought up just the whole analytical perspective and having to deal with making it succinct, making it short. From my assumption, I think a reason for that just because of how little you've been able to be put in that position, and a lot of that time you've been able to do that kind of stuff in Plat Chat because that's where you've mostly been more present. And besides the broadcast, you know, in that aspect, you're able to just talk as much as you want, talk as long as you want, in order to just describe your points about a given team, a given play, a given aspect. Do you kind of feel like that's a reason as to like why you're not able to just make those shorter points, you know, just having to transition from that podcast aspect to the broadcast aspect?
Yeah, I do think that is a part of it. I think another aspect of it is that because you don't have a time limit during the cast of what you can say. I mean, you do in a way, right? Because you want to keep track of what's on screen and not be overextending your time speaking about something in the past. But essentially my point being, you can't dictate how long you want to speak about something. And oftentimes if there's a lot going on in a moment, if there's several, you know, aspects of the game that are maybe one layer down on the iceberg of Valorant complexity, you can end up just spilling out your thoughts very freely. And because during the cast you actually are watching the game, obviously the game is on screen, so it feels easier to kind of just go off and keep going because you're seeing what's occurring on the screen, versus if you're on the analyst desk, for instance, there might be one clip that rolls, but you have to be, there might be a clip that rolls on the analyst desk, but you have to be very quick because your segment might be 1 minute at a halftime. And so you don't have time to fluff things up or add any extra little note or asterisk on top of what you're saying. You just have to say it. And oftentimes that leads the points you make on the analyst desk or what you're saying to be incredibly general, sometimes too general, but it's hard to escape that, where then the inverse is the doing the commentary, where sometimes I think it's easy to get ahead of yourself and say way too much because you have an opportunity presented to you to say too much, if that makes sense. And so I think it's something that a lot of people end up doing. And also, a lot of this stuff is also just personal preference too. What I've learned with the commentary very quickly is that there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, there is a wrong answer. Most of people's thoughts on commentary, criticisms of it, why they like and don't like certain people, is very subjective and or subconscious. I think a lot of everyone can hear or whatever. Let me rephrase. What people are hearing, they know if they like it or not, but they're not necessarily consciously thinking of why that is the case. And when Mitch and I review our own work or review our work with other commentators, etc., there's always a panel of various opinions and takes on how things can be done, because it's a very niche field that is not solved. I don't even know if you can solve something like this that is, a bit more creative in nature. I mean, that's kind of the case to some extent with a lot of sports commentary, but I wouldn't necessarily say solved is the right word for it. It's just that it's very formulaic, where I think in contrast to that, gaming commentary is a lot more free-flowing and open to interpretation, which allows for people's thoughts on it to be a lot more open to their own interpretation as well, which is a good thing, that it allows for everyone to be a bit more themselves and a little bit less, formulaic, which is the case in, again, like sports commentary. When you go to a halftime, you just say this, like you say the score every single time, like Bills lead 14-7, and then it goes to the half. Just like little notes like that we don't have to do.
Yeah, for sure. I do understand that. Shout out to the hometown too, the Buffalo Bills. I understand that. Trying to sneak that a little bit in there. I want to change to a different topic because we are, as I say this, a little bit in the time limit. Just sort of also just talking about your aim besides your current work. When I say that, I'm talking about unnamed, because I remember back then in our previous conversation, you mentioned you wanted to focus a little bit on just building your podcast, building a personality. Aside from that, aside from your work in Valorant, you're sort of being in a way that's kind of resembles the other more popular podcasts. Is like I can't remember the name, but Charlemagne the God. I still remember that kind of aspect. Update on that. Now that you've been able to talk to a few people, add in a few more episodes into the podcast, them being Sideshow Brand, and then also Rob Moore of Sentinels. How have you kind of viewed your progression in that facet for you, and what do you think some of the biggest thing that you feel you have to continue to focus on?
So yeah, I'm very proud of the work that I've done with that so far. The last one that I did, which is crazy, when I remember saying this to you last time, despite how little I actually upload, it's on my mind constantly, and that's still the case. It's been now 5 months since I posted the last one, which was the interview with the Sentinels CEO, Rob Moore. And I'm very proud of that episode. And yeah, I'm essentially, I feel like I'm very much in the same place, though I would definitely say I got a bit sidetracked this year just from the opportunity that came up to do commentary with Mitch. As far as my career goes, career stability, having consistent income, doing something in the gaming space, that had to be my primary focus, because I had not had financial stability in this gaming space in ever. So that immediately took precedent, because the unnamed interviews and that series is at the moment entirely a passion project, and also a passion project that requires investment, which is also, respect that you've brought yourself out to do all this, like to do these interviews here, because that's the same thing that I do when I have to do those. It's the same thing with Rob Moore, renting a studio, flying out, getting all that done, and it's you're not seeing a return on that, but it's not about the return on it. It's about the work itself and the art that you're creating. So I feel like I'm in a pretty similar spot, where hopefully now that the season is over, I feel like, again, I feel pretty accomplished with the work that I did with Mitch. I think we set out We had a goal in mind coming into this year, Mitch and I, of we're going to show people that we're big game casters, and that's what we do. I think we accomplished our goal. We both feel pretty content with it. Obviously, still a lot of work to be done, but we're happy with the progress so far. And we'll still have some work together, like Challengers Online and the Ascension Tournament. Hopefully those events. But as far as time for me now with Unnamed, I'll have a lot more of it. And so getting into the off season, first, I'm excited to go home. I've been in LA constantly. I want to go back to my apartment and relax for a bit. I miss being home. So I'm going to do that. And then after that, I would love to put my primary focus on that for the rest of this year, because like I said, I think about it all the time. I'm proud of the work that I've done, but and you know what I've created, but I am not content with how little I've been able to do it. So that is the goal now that I've achieved some of the other important goals and necessities, which is just kind of finding more stability in this space, which very fortunate and lucky to have been able to stumble upon with Mitch just coming in and needing somebody. So yeah, now I can hopefully, after maybe a week or two off, then try and, you know, get back on the wagon with that, because I've been thinking about it a lot and I'm really excited to do more. Always have been. So
For sure, I really am looking forward to future episodes. I got two more questions, very short. I'm going to try to make it short. First one, that said, you know, as you now look ahead to the future after today, what things have been the one thing that you feel you want to focus on more to be a better version of yourself?
That was the short question. That's crazy. It feels like this is the first thing that comes to mind, and it almost feels like a cop-out, but one of the first thing that absolutely comes to mind is this year, the past 5-6 months of traveling and all this and being out here constantly, my personal health has gone out the fucking window. I cannot wait to refocus myself on that, because, you know, you're eating out every meal, no time to work out, and so in that way I feel pretty trashed. So that is one thing I'll be doing to try and improve myself. That was the first thing that came to mind. Man. That is tough.
I mean, if you just want to leave it there, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, man. No, ask me the last one, and then maybe I'll circle back if I think of something.
All right.
That's a tough one.
All right. I mean, as I said, you know, you've had a very eventful year, kicking it always, you know, kicking it with your work, kicking it, doing things well. Speaking of kicking it, I mean, kicking is something that kind of resembles various things, or kind of symbolizes various things, one of which is soccer. I mean, speaking of soccer, I believe your dad worked as an amateur soccer coach back then, earlier on. I might be wrong on that. I mean, how do you kind of look at that aspect back then in your life?
Yeah, I mean that. I'm very Dutch. My dad is from the Netherlands, and so soccer was very much a part of my life for a long time when I was growing up. A lot of soccer competition, a lot of traveling for all that, and that was until I started gaming, and then all of a sudden my competitive itch transferred from the field to my desk and to playing 1v1 training modes all day long, which was back, you know, when I was like 14, 15 is when I really kind of started going hard gaming. But yeah, that's also kind of just I guess shows also just how long I've been doing things in this space. I mean, yeah, I was competing from when I was 15 to 20 or so, and then just, trying to do various things in the space for a very, very long time, and very comfortable with where I'm at now. And things don't always work as quickly as some people make it seem. I mean, I'm on a solid 13-year run in this space, and after 13 years, I've found some stability in it. So, it's different timings for everything. Different timings for how things will work out in that way. But yeah, definitely thinking way back to then and where I'm at now, have met a lot of the goals that I had in mind then. Thought I would have gone there quicker, but it really doesn't matter ultimately, because now I feel incredibly content that way. So.
No, for sure, Wyatt. Really do appreciate you taking the time and answering all of my questions. You mentioned a little bit about circling back. We'll just leave it there for that.
We'll leave it there because I'll get fired on my last day. I'm about to miss my call time.
Oh, for sure. All right. Thank you so much, Wyatt. Gotta wrap up right now, and I'll see you guys. Or I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course.